Great. Yes, thank you very much. That's going to help a lot of the people to be able to afford to come to Boston. That's wonderful. I wanted to mention we have a few other sponsors that are sponsoring IGEM headquarters directly. Autodesk, IDT, who has the DNA offer for IGEM teams at half price. Any of you who suffered in the lab and spent a long time cloning, remember that for a small of money, you could have just sent the sequence off and had it made. That might be the future. Comes back FedEx. We have the MathWorks has been a sponsor for a long time, providing free software and financial support as well. And Agilent Technologies has been a great sponsor, and particularly as we move into measurement next year, that's going to be even more important. Did I forget any? I think I got it. Oh, and yes, and the FBI. The FBI has been a sponsor of IGEM for several years, and the financial support is very welcome, but the investigative services are also very important. In case of terrorist activities in IGEM, we're very careful about that these days. So I'd like to proceed a little bit here, if I can get my slides up. Can you make them come out? Great. So first off, I'd like to point out the problem that we have at IGEM that's the most serious problem. And that is there are way too many teams. If you've got 200 teams and you go try to look at all the wikis, you're going to spend a couple weeks. This is a big problem. And so one would hope that the only quality comes from those teams that win the awards, because then you can just focus on those wikis. That's very sad. It's just not true. You know, think about the finalists. Now, the finalists will have one of the regional prize winners, but what about the others? You ought to check out their wikis. And once you start that, you realize that the wikis and the teams and the projects have done amazing things all over the place. It's wonderful. But so if there can be some crowdsourcing review of the IGEM wikis, we'd appreciate it. So see if you can help us on that. The second thing is I'd like to make an announcement. We've been talking about it a bit, but I'd like to say a little bit more about it. And that is that in 2014, the first weekend of November, we'll have a single giant jamboree in Boston. And everybody comes directly to that jamboree. And so plan to come back, have teams again. If you're graduating, going to new schools, have teams at those schools. If you're graduating and becoming professors, become advisors to teams at the new schools you're going to. If you have friends coming into schools, you have friends at other schools, tell them all about it. We have enough room. In the convention center, I hear we can hold 10,000 people, which would be about 600 teams, so it'll be fine. We are expecting, this year we had 215 teams, this year expecting about 275, maybe 300 teams. When I came out yesterday and looked at this group, I was just kind of shocked. Like, oh my goodness, all those people. But you need to realize that last weekend, we had another group of the same size in Hong Kong and another group of the same size in Toronto. So it's getting to be pretty big. If we have, say, 250, 3,000 teams, we'll have somewhere near 4,000 people attending the giant jamboree. In order to encourage a more open world in IGEM, this year we developed the overgrad division. And I like to explain it so people understand it correctly. In the past, people thought of IGEM as an undergraduate competition, and therefore, why would there be any master's students? How come some of the students seem so old? And these questions came up, and we worked and worked and worked on how would we cut out those students that have too much ability, that are too old, that are getting more advanced degrees. And we realized there was no solution to that. If somebody is in a country where compulsory military service happens, then they get to be older, right? And you can't say that that experience in the military had no value. They've learned things from that. So we developed the idea of an age limit to the undergrads and no age limit to the overgrads. So those of you in your 60s and 70s will be starting the old person's IGEM team. I'll probably be the leader of that. And so you can do, that can continue on. I think of that as a great opportunity to open up IGEM. For next year, we'll be encouraging DIY or community biolabs to participate in IGEM for the first time. Ellen Jorgensen from the GenSpace in New York is chairing that activity. We'll figure out how to make sure it's safe and responsible. And one might note, many of them are older than 23 and they'll fall into the overgrad division. So it's handy we have built that this year. The next thing that's happening is that we're going to be doing measurement. We're going to bring measurement into IGEM in a more organized way. One of the things that you'll get in your distribution kits next year is a measurement kit that you can measure in your labs, and you'll be able to post the results to the website, and we'll develop a worldwide map of all the IGEM teams and laboratories so we can compare the different results that people get in different places. Maybe there's a tendency towards excessive expression in Europe. Maybe in Asia, they have more variety in some of the measurements. In Latin America, I don't know. We'll find out. So that will be the first step. The second step is we'll offer an award for accomplishment in measuring a lot of stuff. And another award, which is innovation in measurement techniques. Measurement is one of the cores of an engineering discipline, and it's important for us to do that. We'll also be developing some new technologies, for example, microfluidics, and have the ability to support a few teams that want to do that with the right technologies. And we'll be looking at assembly. Assembly keeps on being an issue. We actually paid a lot of attention to that this past winter. We discovered the primary problem with assembly in the past has been if you take a good part and a bad part and you assemble them, you don't get a good part. Surprise. So we'll be working on that and making that be much better. We'll be forming more ways to be in contact with the community. So that's kind of what's happening in terms of the Giant Jamboree. Invite everybody to come. It'll be great. I'd like to do a little bit of thanks, not a lot, but a little bit. I'd like to thank the people here at this site, the organizers, the volunteers. I think there's 1,000 of them, pretty close, hundreds anyway. And I'd like to thank the judges. In IGEM for the regions, we have about 140 judges. A fair number of them, about 50, are here. The task of being a judge is very difficult. We freeze the wikis so the judges have a week to study them. And they look at your parts, and they look at what you've sent, and they look what you were claiming, and they learn about all of that, and they do some of their voting at that time. Then they have to watch all the presentations, try to remember which team was which, and they have to do voting, and we have judging meetings, which in the past have gone into the wee hours of the morning. This time we have a new voting system, and we were able to finish our judging meeting by 11:30 last night. The judges have been off while we were taking the picture and having the break, and they've come up with the final results. I'd like to say a little bit about the values of IGEM. When we started IGEM, we based it a bit on the robot competition, the first robotics competition, which is very popular in high schools. And I talked with Woody Flowers, who was the founder of that, and I asked him many questions of what to do. One thing he said was have wonderful jamborees because the teams work so hard, they deserve it. So we try to do that. But I also said, so what did I fail to ask? And he said, you didn't ask what values we're trying to teach. And I thought, that's a good point. So I'd like to point out the values of IGEM. The first value is recognition of effort. The teams have worked incredibly hard. They have stayed up in the lab late. They have poured their hearts into this, and it's important that we recognize that effort as we think about the IGEM teams. Our second value in that area is accomplishment. And as I was pointing out, the teams have accomplished an immense amount. The first IGEM with 5 schools, the teams worked hard, but it was too hard. and not too much of their project worked. That has changed so dramatically. You're seeing that many of the teams have projects that have maybe 4 or 5 different facets, and maybe not all of them worked perfectly, but many of them did. And when we started IGEM, I went around to the professors in biology at MIT that I knew, saying, what do you think? This sounds great. We're going to do this IGEM thing. And they said, Randy, you're making a big mistake. You shouldn't do it. And you know, these are professors at MIT, right? I should have listened. And they said, you know, the problem is undergraduates don't know anything. And a summer is so short. They'll just get teased and they won't be able to ever accomplish anything. So I have to now go back to those professors and explain the real world to them, how synthetic biology has really changed that. The third value is excellence. When you look at some of the award winners, when I look at these finalists, it's astonishing. This is way beyond work done in the normal course of events. I think the parts, I think the team activity, and the fact that the teams get to do a project of their choice is critical. We need to recognize that excellence in the ceremony today. Underneath these, there are 3 other values that are important. The first value is respect. And in Europe, it's pretty, that's working really well. In other areas, that's not working quite as well. But respect is important because all of the teams, all of the judges, all the organizers are doing their very best effort. And you need to respect that. You need to tolerate the little bits of problems that there are. You may not totally agree with the judges, but you have to respect them as the judges of this event. The second value is cooperation. And we know that in the world of biology and science, collaboration is considered valuable. We want more than that. We want the teams to actually work together, and we reward that with the awards and medals that we give out. The final value, which is the core of all of this, is integrity. And by that I mean a very specific thing, and that is intentionally telling the truth. Not finding some words that kind of, well, we disagree, but we'll just choose some word and maybe it'll be okay. But rather, actually telling the truth. You have to tell the truth to yourselves as scientists because nature doesn't lie to you. And you have to tell the truth to everybody else as well. It's important for your reputation. So those are values. So I'd like to say a couple things about IGEM and this competition. How come it's a competition but we call it a jamboree? That's weird, right? The answer is we're celebrating. We're celebrating all the work. So if we're having that, why don't we just have a normal scientific conference where people just present their papers? And the answer is that competition, as we all know from sports, is something that spices up everything you do. It provides an extra drive. It provides the extra fun. But at the core, and I use a lot of sports analogies because I think the value that so many people see, the enjoyment so many people have of sports, should not be excluded from the academic and engineering world. Why can't we have the fun too? I note that in soccer you have the World Cup players, right? But how come when I'm in Paris in the arena, I see these kids playing soccer and they're kicking the ball around? Why are they doing that? They're never going to be in the World Cup. They're doing it because it's fun. And I hope that the people in IGEM, the teams and the students in IGEM, are doing it because it's fun. Is it fun? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. So why are we doing synthetic biology? Yes. So why are we doing synthetic biology? Because it's fun, right, yes. But there's a kind of a model that I have in my head, which is that when I was young, I did very poorly in history because you had to remember the exact date. As I'm older, I learned that I can round, right? So Roman Empire, minus 500 plus 500. Easy, right? Middle Ages, minus 500 to plus 1500. Then you have the Renaissance, trying to get back to the Greek and Roman Empire. So in terms of the revolutions, you have the Industrial Revolution, which was kind of around 1800, and it's been continuing on. We're still doing that. What it was about was becoming good at energy. Before the Industrial Revolution, you could do what you could do with your muscles. So you could chop a tree. You could, saw something. You could use a little bit of wind, a little bit of water, your animals to plow, and slaves. That caused problems of its own. So after that, and we're still doing that, think about it, a little cordless drill, what you can do with that, what a fine tool. The key for that was the machine. The next big revolution, and it was pointed out yesterday that the 20th century was the year of the atom, and in many ways it was, but the one I think about the most is the information revolution. The tool of the information revolution was the computer. And the information, it turned out the information was like energy. It was a fundamental fact of nature. That actually ties back to the point of the atom, back to quantum mechanics and all that. So information revolution took a long time. From about 1950 on to now, 60-some years, I'm rounding, the information got to be something we were all good at. We're still maybe halfway done. We've got a long time before our wireless devices actually work everywhere, before I can actually get everything I need anywhere, and my Google Glasses or whatever version of that is embedded in my eyeball. So we have a way to go. We're at the beginning of the next revolution. That revolution is about matter. It's about molecules. It's about chemicals. It's about becoming good and fluent at matter. We have ideas right now of problems and applications, a need for fuels, for example, or for remediation. But the problem, the puzzle, isn't that. That would be like looking at a computer and saying, oh, it's good at numbers, therefore its future is accounting. Right now, most of the cycles being used in computers are inside our cell phones with software radios that are listening for some phone call or an email to arrive. And the biggest thing we do, of course, is we run videos. That's what computers are good at. They're good at information. So the tool of the synthetic biology materials revolution is the cell. And that's what we're all about. We're about 10 years into that. People get a little frustrated that things don't happen more quickly, but remember, in round numbers, the network started about 1970. It was 25 years before we had the browser and the World Wide Web beginning. So I have some patience. I think that we have enough time, and that's good for you, because you're all busy studying, but pretty soon you'll get out into the real world, as real as it is, and you'll be starting companies. You'll be becoming professors and starting labs. We right now have a lot of institutes for synthetics and systems biology in the world. You'll be joining those. But I have bigger expectations for you. You're IGEMers, after all, right? I expect you to be the leaders of the labs. For the women in the IGEM teams, I expect that you're going to, remember the chart? Synthetic biology can't succeed unless you're leading. Do you get that? You saw the big bar? Right? If you don't do that, I mean, it looked to me like it's worth 20%. Our field will be 20% better if the women take the lead. So next time you come up and you have a presentation with a team, and it's kind of like, who's going to talk? Step forward. It's worth it. It's great. I expect you to start the new companies. In these kind of revolutions, don't always just look at the big companies that exist, because they're doing their thing in their way, but there are new things to do. So I expect that you will create the companies, that you will make the fortunes, that you will own the private jets. Girls, give me rides in your private jet. Okay? So let us continue with the awards. The judges are back. And thank you very much.